Welcome back. We're discussing America's image in the world with James Glassman, the US Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, whose main task is to engage with the rest of the world at an ideological level. Let's get our questions. And Philip in New Zealand, thanks for your patience. What's your question, please?
I was born in 1935, and in the height of the last Great Depression. And my father and two of my mother's brothers went to war in September 1939, and they said that the reason for World War II was the rise of despots such as Franco in Spain, Mussolini in Italy, Hitler in Germany, and Stalin in Russia during the last Great Depression. Does the Secretary think that World War III will come out of this current depression? Okay. That's my question. I'm being brief and blunt.
Thank you very much, Philip.
Well, thanks for your question. First of all, let me just say that we're not in a depression yet. Certainly, the economy is headed down globally, and it may slow considerably. The Great Depression was a time when the United States unemployment was 25%. It's now 6%. Certainly, when times are tough for countries, the opportunity for a despot to arise, I think, tends to be a lot greater. But I think we live in a very, very different period when democracy has taken root in much of the world, and especially over the last 20 years. So I think that's less of a problem today than it was in the 1930s.
Okay. Well, let's get MATAR on the line from Sweden. MATAR, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, my question is to the gentleman, and it's about the image of America. Okay. When I heard of 9/11, first I thought of Chile. I thought it was the Chileans because of the American action against Allende. I've seen the American action against Cuba. You see, you don't have a dirty habit, and you think people love you because it is America. It does not work that way. I mean, you have to respect people, you have to respect their government, and you have to respect the people that they choose, like Hamas.
MATAR?
Israel is having a member in their coalition government that does not even want to see the existence of the Palestinians, but still you accept them. Why not accept Hamas?
MATAR, that's an interesting point. A lot of people feel that there are double standards out of the US. For example, that they want, the US wants democracy, it wants people to be voted in, but then in the case of you have Hamas, for example, voted in, but the US won't recognize it as a legitimate vote.
Right. I think in the case of Hamas, we have a winner in an election that wants to exterminate a country that this country, the United States, and virtually every other nation in the world believes ought to be part of a two-state solution. That is to say, Israel. So you have a state of Israel and a state of Palestine. Hamas does not accept the idea of Israel existing. So I think the animosity toward Hamas by this country and by Europe and by many other parts of the world, I think, is completely understandable.
Would engagement be a better option than isolation?
Well, we are engaging. I mean, for example, we at the State Department, we have exchanges with people in Gaza who are under the control of Hamas. We are supplying a great deal of humanitarian aid. But I think you've got a government there that our government characterizes as a terrorist government that presents some very serious problems for us. But I think there are problems that the Palestinian people themselves will work out. And if you look at the surveys among the Palestinians, support for Hamas has dropped. Support is pretty small these days for Hamas. So we may see a turning point.
Let's get Reginald in Fiji first then. Reginald, go ahead. Hi, Reginald, are you there?
Yes. Good morning. To me, the world against America has to do with two words. This word, our way of life, and the word freedom. What is the meaning of freedom in the American system and as against the rest of the world, and our way of life? Thank you.
Sure. I'm not sure what you mean by our way of life. Let me be very clear about what I mean by our way of life. We live in a specific way in the United States. You live in a different way in Fiji. Absolutely, the United States doesn't want to impose its way of life on the rest of the world. Our main concern right now is the threat of violent extremism around the world. And it's not only our concern. Obviously, the Pakistanis are concerned. People in Afghanistan, people in London, people are concerned about it. So the choice, what freedom means is the ability to choose yourself as an individual what kind of government you want to have, what kind of economic system you want to have, what kind of job you want to have, where you want to live. And unfortunately, we live in a world in which there are many governments and many non-governments that want to impose their own ideas on their citizens, and now, that's a dangerous thing. I
think this ties into what Reginald was talking about. Now, I've heard you say you're not there to promote propaganda. I've heard you in interviews say that, right. But that America is in the persuasion business, and I wonder how easy it is to persuade anyone to go along with America if you have a president who uses terms like "you're with us" or "you're against us," that has these sort of ultimatums and talks about the American
right. And I think that's a very good point. I don't think this president has used that phrase in 7 years. And I think there has been a learning process that has gone on over the last 7 years. The idea of a Manichaean good and evil, or this choice and that choice kind of world, is one that Al-Qaeda has, that the Taliban has, that many other violent extremists have, that we in the United States, speaking for myself, and I think certainly for the administration, we do not have that view. There is one choice, however, that we reject, and reject very strongly, and are not embarrassed to reject, and that is the choice of violent extremism. I mean, that's not good for the people who live under it, and it's not good for the other people in the world who are threatened by it. But as far as us or us against them, that certainly is not our point of view.
Well, let's get RAHMAN back on the line and see if we can get a question from you from London.
Good afternoon. Good evening,
good evening.
From London. I just want to say my personal view about America. I view America as a tyrant of our modern time, a selfish dictator who has done more harm than good. I don't know if our guest can agree to this.
Well, RAHMAN, can I ask you, while we have you on the line, are you differentiating between the American people and the American administration?
I don't want to differentiate between the American people and the American administration, because we saw that these American people, despite the fact that the Bush administration was not right to wage war against Iraq, yet these American people voted George Bush, and so they were the people who have given him the green light to go along with his policies. So there is no difference between the American people and the American administration.
RAHMAN, thanks. So Mr. Glassman, when you're facing these kind of views, how do you address them? When you're having to try and put that public diplomacy
we try to address them with facts. Sometimes that doesn't work, but we do try to address them with facts. And I would say that when you look at the surveys about favorability of the United States, the most recent survey by the Pew Global Research, which was in June, showed that in 80% of the countries our numbers are going up. Now, in the Middle East and in much of Europe, the numbers are not very good. But in countries in Africa, in much of Asia, in much of Latin America, they are quite good. How do I address somebody like this? The United States is not a tyrant. Saddam Hussein was a tyrant. Saddam Hussein killed 300,000 of his own people. That's an undeniable fact. And he threatened the rest of the world. He invaded Kuwait. He was, in the view of nearly the entire world, we learned something different when we actually got there, developing weapons of mass destruction. If we had left him alone, I'm sure he would have developed those weapons. And he was a threat. So that's why we invaded, we went into Iraq. We didn't go into Iraq to win oil for ourselves or to enslave the Iraqi people or to do the kinds of things that throughout history countries that had our kind of power did. That's not what the United States does.
40 seconds to go, sir, and I ask you what happens when the administration changes? What happens to your role and what do you expect to leave behind?
Well, the way it normally works is that the new administration will pick other people for jobs like mine. We can't be sure. It may not. This is there's a possibility if Barack Obama wins, he's talking about being very bipartisan, so we may see a change there. If John McCain wins, you probably also would see something bipartisan. But generally, there is a change. What we try to do really is establish a platform so the next administration can pick up where we left off.
Well, Mr. Glassman, I hope we have a chance to chat again. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Riz.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for being with us. On the next show, we ask how free and fair will the upcoming US election be? We'll look at allegations of voter fraud and intimidation. We'll see you next time. From me and the team, goodbye.